I'm R.A. Schwartz alongside Rachel Galligan, and welcome to the Winsidr Show, where it's all about the W. It's time for a free agency update. So many moves have happened, some we like, some we don't. Let's dive in and discuss. If you like our show, please consider joining our Patreon community, patreon.com/Winsidr. That's patreon.com/Winsidr. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. And don't forget to see our amazing staff's written content over at winsidr.com. That's winsidr.com. Very excited to be back at the show, on the show, in the show, with the great Rachel Galligan. So much to discuss. I know everyone skips through the ad read in the beginning. I just want to reiterate, going up until the WNBA season begins, all of our articles, all of our content on patreon.com/Winsidr will be free, just because we want you to understand what we're going to be doing this coming season. A lot more content, weekly content over there. Please do understand how important and necessary Patreon is for the content we produce, this podcast, on the Winsidr website, on social media, and heck, even doing the Bleacher Report shows. So please do, if you're able and if you like the content, do support us there. Okay, Rachel, a lot to discuss. We can go all over the place. I mean, I guess like when I view free agency, the biggest pet peeve of mine, and I've been getting a lot of flack in the Winsidr Slack. I've been getting a lot of flack with other people. Maybe I'm a little bit too much of a downer or a negative person. I don't know. But it seems to me, at least, the overall arching topic of free agency this year has been superstars or big names demanding trades. And in my opinion, GMs getting lackluster return for those superstars. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Players would hate me if I'm a GM because I would be ruthless, cutthroat, heartbreaking. I'm sorry. You want to demand a trade? Cool. You're not playing unless I'm getting what our team needs in return. We can go into that more in-depthly. And obviously, I think, sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. Do you think, Rachel, because we always talk about one day jokingly, and, becoming a WNBA GM, winning a championship in 5 years. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Book it, quote it, write it, put it on the plaque. It's happening once we're given that GM title. But no, when you view that, do you think that's the headline of this free agency period? Do you think that I'm right that GMs aren't getting enough for it? Where's your mindset when I say that?
It's just such a loaded question.
I just want to get a clip of you, Rachel, saying something crazy.
It just changes. Every franchise is so different right now. It doesn't feel like the playing field's even level at this point. So it's really hard to analyze that. And there's so many moving parts in a year like this year in particular, where, you've got an expansion team and then you've got other teams coming down the pike, and then you've got everybody just signing 1-year deals. So there's an added element of hey, I'm coming there for a year. I'm going to use you. This is a rental. And then I'm going to go make a decision after the CBA. That's for the real, I got to prove some things this year. It's just, there's so many elements to this that are and I'm sure it's hard for the players to even make these decisions, right? Because you really can't think long-term. It's like musical chairs right now. And then it's going to be the ultimate musical chairs a year from now. I think more than anything, I see players trying to get together. There's places that people want to be, and there's places people don't want to be. That's very clear. That's typical free agency. And a lot of that is dependent on resources and, what's available. I think it's very obvious that people want to be I'm taking Vegas out. I'm taking New York out. I'm talking about that next tier. People want to be in Phoenix. I think that there's an element there of ripping the Band-Aid off, turning the page. Let's truly see what this franchise is about. And I think that that's going to be interesting to look at. I think that
Rachel, can we just say it? Can we just say it? How cutthroat Phoenix is they literally just traded their number one marketing player who was posting videos. I don't want to say daily, but Natasha Cloud, we can argue about where she ranks in terms of point guards in the league right now. She's won a championship. She's had seasons where she's led the league in assists. She moves, it was a big hoopla. There was rumblings of, was it done illegally when she signed with Phoenix last year against the league rules? Was it not? There was a lot of frustration there. She left DC angry, and now she's leaving Phoenix angry after spending the whole offseason and season bragging about everything that's advocating. That's the word I'm looking for. Advocating for everything that makes
selling, amazing. Recruiting. I mean, yeah,
it's a business.
That's a tough pill to swallow. It was tough to get the news. It was tough to kind of because there's a human element to this that cannot be denied. But you're right. At the end of the day, that front office in Phoenix is on a mission to do some things, and they were going to get Satu Sabally come hell or high water. And that was someone that they were completely focused and locked in on acquiring. And I mean, geez, look at this week too. I mean, not that I want to make this about the NBA, but look what happened to Luka. I mean, good Lord, I'm still everybody. That's one of the most ridiculous blockbuster deals, trades we've ever seen in NBA history. So it just kind of takes you back down to reality of, these front offices are jockeying for a certain type of direction and ideology, and they're trying to get some things done, and they're going to do whatever the hell it takes to get it done, whether we agree with it, whether we don't, whatever, if it makes sense to us. There's so many things we don't even realize about what's behind this stuff, and that's what that's why we have jobs, and that's why we get to have a good time talking about these things. But yeah, that was a hard one to swallow. I mean, I think you have people now. I mean, I've got big question marks about the Atlanta Dream. I think before, I have the Dream is in this own little category. Is this a place people want to be, or are they kind of this little stepsister that's just kind of there? And is it do you get what I'm saying? I don't know if anybody else feels this way. The arena that they play, resources, Dan Padover, Carl Smesko comes in, there's something in the last couple of years that Atlanta was missing the mark. And I don't know what it is. I really genuinely, I cannot put my finger on it. But I think you can see that there's been some getting together at Unrivaled, out on the boat, players talking and hanging out and making decisions to be in this place. Can Atlanta do enough this year with all the decisions they've made in the offseason to position themselves to be a destination for agents want to be at a year from now? That's the big question of Atlanta. And then, I mean, of course, Golden State, that's an interesting one to analyze because, yeah, it's a brand new franchise. You would think all the resources in the world and all the fun branding and all that. But at the end of the day, even talked openly about the frustrations of striking out in free agency. So a lot of that probably has to do with the CBA and next year. And, was someone really willing to go there for 1 year and then potentially it's some really interesting things to analyze. I think that's probably the bigger angle there. And I mean, with LA too, I think LA has positioned themselves. I think they're doing better is what I want to say. We've been really harsh on LA, I think, from certain points at times. Rightfully so. Kurt Miller goes in there, lays the foundation of this complete overhaul that absolutely needed to happen. And now it's taking it to that next step. Kelsey Plum, that's a huge addition. Everybody knows how huge of a fan I am of Kelsey Plum. Things like the practice facility. What is all of this really going to mean? Is this truly a destination? I think to some degree it's always going to be because it's LA. Let's talk about the Connecticut Sun. I mean, right now it feels like they're just getting all the leftovers. Whoever needs a place to go, come here because we can give you a job type of thing is the way it feels right now with Connecticut and probably Golden State. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I have Connecticut, Chicago, and Golden State kind of in their own category of flailing.
You need to even start putting Seattle in that conversation.
So Seattle, the only reason I don't have them
on their team right now, 5.
Yes. But the only reason that I don't have them in that same is because they have a former MVP, because they have a Skylar Diggins-Smith. I'm not saying it's going to work, but they have the facilities and they at least have a couple star core players where, if we're talking about Chicago, this is not shade to Reese or Camilla. This is me just saying they are not the superstars yet. They are not a Nneka Ogwumike yet. They have not won MVP. So like and even heck with Connecticut, like I look at Connecticut, they're adding players that like no player that they've added is, in their peak or is playing their best basketball. Honestly, all of them that they've gotten, arguably, you could say for Connecticut, are past their peak, are not playing their best basketball, and are still riding the wave of things that they did in the past versus things that they're about to do. So those are all the teams that I kind of have in their own category of like just trying to figure out how to get the boat going in the right direction. Because right now it's like you got people paddling in all different directions. They're just spinning.
Well, but let me say one part of that. How do you get the boat going in the right direction when the pond is going to implode again 11 months from now? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of like, let's just do our best and let's just hope we can do our best again. Let's just hope right now. And again, I tweeted it again. I'm just going to say it again. Let's just do our best. Let's fill out our rosters. Let's try to have a good culture. Let's get people that like to play together. Let's try to be competitive. And more than anything, the most important thing is how are these ownerships and front offices and leadership groups, whatever cities, going to invest in these franchises? That way, 1 year from now, when it's legitimately the biggest musical chairs we've ever seen in the WNBA, they can attract all of these free agents. I mean, what was the number? I think we saw it on Twitter the other day.
Over 100, like 120 or something.
Yeah, like 90% of the league, 80% of the league, on the move in terms of free agency. So to me, that's the bigger topic of conversation. I think right now, if I'm a GM kind of in these like middle to low tiers and you're kind of like, man, I want to win, but like I'm still going to have a chance a year from now if we can kind of just prove to people that we are competitive, prove to people that we are a place that players can be taken care of and have success at. And again, it just goes to that investment, that ownership. That's the bigger underlying conversation here. In my opinion.
And I would say with that, like for those teams that are not going to be contending this year, it's about earmarking, getting a roster of 12 players and earmarking, hey, these 3 players are players that we want. That's the type of player we want. It's not about so often watching it from the outside. Is this player succeeding? Is the team getting dubs? If they're not, then this is a failure. So often it's like, oh, you don't need to make win a championship to have a successful season. You need to get X amount of wins or blah, 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 or make the playoffs. For me, for a lot of these teams, it's not that. It's finding 1 or 2 players, maybe 3. Maybe you already have 1 or 2 and you're adding a 3rd or 4th player, whether or not that player is going to be a star or an 8th player off the bench. Finding those culture players, those people who are foundational players in terms of, mindset, work ethic, things like that. A question I have for you, because we've been talking about a few different things, and I know the Atlanta Dream are kind of in their own world, so I apologize for bringing this in. But when I talk Atlanta, Indiana, Phoenix, which of those 3 teams do you think so far at this point got closer? Or I guess like we can view it in 2 different ways. Who moved the most, getting closer to being a championship contender? And I know Phoenix still has a lot of work to do with their roster. They don't have that many people on roster. But so like between those 3, do you see one of them being closest to being a championship contender? And do you think one of them maybe, made the biggest leap forward towards that goal of winning a championship?
Gut reaction, Indiana Fever.
Yeah.
I think you have they maintained the core and enough consistency, and they added exactly what they needed in terms of veteran experience come playoff time, understanding what it takes to go win a WNBA championship. Even though, Natasha Howard may not be, 100% at her prime, she's still a player that in my opinion is a shot in the arm, and that helps that team on both ends of the floor. Same thing with DeWanna Bonner and Sophie Cunningham. I think you add just even the personalities, the fire, the competitiveness. I mean, there's going to be some spicy moments between Caitlin Clark, DeWanna Bonner, Sophie Cunningham on this team. Like they're gonna go toe to toe with some people. I mean, we're gonna have some bow up, chest up moments.
Don't forget about Steph White. Right.
I think Yeah, I think the Fever did. I don't know that I'm ready to crown them a true contender. I'm not trying to piss off the Fever fans, y'all. Remember, I'm one of you. Okay, I'm one of you. I lived in Indiana. I was there when we won the championship. So I'm just being a realist.
Yeah, let's make a comparison to when Vegas added, Liz Cambage and all these things, and people crowned them champions. When
there were levels
New
to
York,
that. There were
exactly
tiers,
when New York added these superstars, Stewie Sloot, all these players, JJ, they didn't win it right away.
Right.
When Seattle last year put together all those players, it looked bad. I mean, Phoenix, how many times have they just put together I agree, this Fever roster is a really nice mixture of vet presence, youthfulness, a lot of skill, a lot of shooting, still a little bit of questions on defense. I think you've addressed it in some ways. Still some questions in depth. But this roster, realistically, how deep are you truly going? Maybe 9, maybe 10 in a game. When it comes to playoffs, you're not going that deep in the roster. So I think that matters less. And the moves they made are going to pay dividends in terms of the growth of Aaliyah Boston, the growth of Caitlin Clark. And really, honestly, this team is more built for playoffs, I think. I'm less concerned. I'm kind of viewing this like a Phoenix Mercury of yesteryear, where you were less concerned about how, you're picking up on cues during the regular season, but this team is much more built for the playoffs, I think, than, a lot of teams when they're put together. It's like, okay, this is going to be a contender. This is going to be a really good team. They have all these superstars. I have my questions, but I think when we get to playoff time, we're going to know who this team is. We're going to know a lot better. Are they flopping? And just, something that always comes into my mind, Rachel, when free agency is going on and we see those videos of like Brittany Griner out fishing with the Atlanta Dream roster, and then she's saying, hey, I'm going there, and obviously I think it's more the GM putting out the marching orders for the teammates, but is it Alicia Gray and Ryan Howard going up to their GM and coach and saying, hey, we want BG, we're going to go recruit her at AU? Or is it Dan Padover coming up to them and saying, hey, we really want BG, we need your help, go help? Because those can be two different things. Sometimes players get along and they're friends and they're great, but it's not going to work on the court. And sometimes players don't get along and it works great on the court. So I guess just because people are campaigning for you to join their team does not mean that it's sunshines and roses and you're going to win a championship.
I mean, I think it goes both ways with that. I mean, and it definitely helps when you have Unrivaled and all these players a lot of them are in one location able to do those types of things. So definitely an interesting element to this year in particular. But yeah, I mean, it still has to work out on the court together. I mean, you can be friends and until you really step out in between the lines in training camp and you step out in between the lines of practice and you go to war with one another, that certainly can change some dynamics, so there's always going to be some unknowns in those equations. I think it was very clear that in the Atlanta Dream, I mean, they've been really shorthanded when it comes to that backcourt. That's been something they've been trying to attract, it feels like, for the last 2 or 3 years. Well, now you could almost make an argument that they did too much. And what is it going to look like with Brittany Griner and Brianna Jones out there together? Are they able to play together? Who's going to come off the bench? How is that going to work? I don't know. Interesting. I'm off on a tangent now. What are we talking about next?
No, I don't even know. No, I think you made some really interesting points, some really good points. It's an exciting time for W.
I want to ask your opinion about Courtney Vandersloot in Chicago.
Why you got to put me on this? No. Look, I hope this doesn't come off disrespectful because she is a 2-time champion. She's one of the greatest point guards in WNBA history, a floor general, whatever you want to call her. Obviously, in my opinion, at least, and this is not based on talking to her camp, New York's camp, or Chicago's camp. To me, it's quite obvious that New York realized during last season, we can win. And arguably, we were better when Sloot was out. Obviously, Sloot was going through her own personal things. Much love to her and her family. Totally understand that. And, the team rallied around her, and that was something that helped the team. It's a beautiful story of her going back to Chicago, the team that she started with, won that first championship. Like we said, it's a 1-year rental. There was some interesting reporting coming out from the great Annie about, how she wanted them to add a few more shooters and to make this more of a competitive roster. I'm sorry, the Chicago Sky roster is not a competitive roster. I'm just going to be blunt. They have some pieces. I think Sloot is doing a community service good deed for joining back with the Chicago Sky for the fan base and also for the young stars on this team, Angel Reese and Cardozo.
For sure.
So, I think there's a positive in that. Obviously, she's not caring about winning. She's not trying to win another ring right now. If she was, I think there's other teams she could have, taken interest. There was talk about Seattle in past years, but Seattle's kind of, for lack of a better term, shit show right now. There's some other locations she probably could have ventured out to view if she wanted a little bit more of a chance of winning. But I do think there is something, and you can probably talk to us more than I can, as that you have played in real competitive leagues, unlike I. But just in the sense of there's something about joining a team that has upside and has that drive and want to succeed, even though the deck is stacked against them, even though the makeup of your roster is not winning a championship. There's something galvanizing about being part of that, and especially when there's a city that you have a connection to. I think it's great for the growth of this team and for this this first year head coach, Tyler Marsh. But it doesn't move the needle for me. It's a great narrative play for the Chicago Sky fans, but have they even started actual work on their facility? Because if you don't have a facility, frankly, it just doesn't matter. I mean, Rachel, we were talking about this.
Back to my point.
People were out there doing guerrilla journalism, showing up to the address that's supposed to be and going live on it. Shout out to the legends. This past WNBA season, they did not get enough attention. The one Lynx fan who live streamed the preseason game on whatever it was on their Twitter. And then shout out to the other fan or reporter, I forget who it was, who then went to the Chicago Sky practice facility, in air quotes, and goes, there's no construction. There's a single hole from a single shovel of where they broke ground, and nothing has happened 4 months later. Just ridiculous, hilarious. I don't am I wrong? Do you see anything different?
I don't think so. It goes back to my point. I think I'm always going to be really critical of the Chicago Sky. I say it every time. I literally say that, and then I say this. It was an anomaly, the fact that they won a championship. I say it every time. That's why
the wildest, right? The 500 record just went on a playoff tear. They literally forced the league to change it.
I was there. I was on the court side. I mean, it was holy shit, this is never going to happen again. It was I'm from there. I've studied it. I've watched this franchise. I know the ownership. I get what's going on here. What I will say is, the experiment last year with Witherspoon and Kennedy Carter and all of that was just obviously they decided that wasn't going to work. This is not the direction long-term that we need to go with, understandably. So then, when you have a revolving door of not just coaches, but talent. I mean, Kennedy Carter is a talent. It's very obvious that it doesn't seem like she's going to end up with the Chicago Sky. I don't know where she's going to end up. We've talked about several names right now that are still kind of left unattained, I guess, right now. Alicia Clark, Kennedy Carter, Erica Wheeler, Cheyenne Parker-Tyus. I mean, there's a lot of different names right now that, there's still stuff to happen. I feel like with Chicago, it's just another year of sitting here saying, okay, it's a new start. Obviously you have a core of Angel Reese, Camila Cardoso.
How many times have we said that about Chicago over the last 6 years?
Right. I mean, Elizabeth Williams. I like Michaela Onyenwere. Mariah Jefferson. We say this every time. Can she stay healthy? Lindsay Allen, that's a nice vet that can come in here and give you something. You had Courtney Vandersloot. There's a feel good. I kind of get to be the front court face of the franchise. Backcourt, sorry, I always get this confused at times. Coming back, heroic, and I think I'm
glad you do, by the way.
It's an opportunity to. It is to me. It feels weird. It feels like it should be the other way around. But it's an opportunity for her to go back and play in front of that fan base that means a lot. Family there, whatever it may be. Chicago needs her. She needs them. If the true point, and I don't know this for sure, I really don't, is to kind of prove, hey, I've still got some miles underneath me. I can give meaningful minutes and be a starter, on a team and continue to break records like I've done my entire career as one of the best in history, will go down as one of the best point guards in the WNBA. So, I think her being able to prove that this year will be beneficial. So we'll see. We'll see how this looks. I think more than anything, there's a lot of speculation. Should they offset that number 3 pick, try and get some? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think that would be a huge mistake. I think they can get a massive asset with that pick. It's number 3 they have, right? I'm trying to make sure.
Rachel, I agree with you. I think the biggest asset, and my whole thing about the GMs flailing, is I get you're only giving these players for a 1-year lend, but that's why I feel like the trade demand holds a little bit less weight because of the new CBA. So I think the GMs owning the player before the trade has a little bit more. That said, I think well, I lost my train of thought, but I think that with what we have as the current layout of the league, it's the draft picks. It's if you are giving up draft picks, you are a fool. If you are giving up star power and not getting draft picks back, I have a lot of hate for Seattle not getting more back for Jewel Lloyd, right?
Yeah.
That said, they got a number 2 pick. I would have liked them to get a little bit more and not have to give up a first rounder in that. But that's what it is. Do not give up the number 3. Do not give up draft picks.
I feel very strongly that it would be a massive mistake for this current Chicago Sky ownership, leadership group to give up that pick just to try to instantly try and win this year.
You're not doing it.
I don't like it. I don't like that narrative. I think it's silly. I think it's dumb. I think the best way for the Chicago Sky is to try and rebuild through the draft. They're not attracting top free agents. They have a lot to do before they're going to do that. So they have got to find a way, and they've got a great foundation with Camila Cardoso, Angel Reese. Number 3, you can get a massive asset. I'm gonna come out with my other mock draft because mine, the previous one I came out last week, lasted about 4 hours, and then all the trades started hitting. So yes, I have confirmed today I will be coming out with another mock draft, and I know Winsidr, we're going to be doing one as well. But I think that number 3 pick is not, when it comes to Chicago, should be getting a lot more attention of how this can really help this team for the immediate future and long after that.
Yeah, I'm with you. Oh, I think we've touched on our topics for today, Rachel. I know we won't have an episode next week, but when we get back, there'll be so much free agency talk. We'll start possibly going more in depth into individual teams, maybe major topics, obviously talking tiers, who we think contenders are, way too early championship predictions, way too early. Honestly, I'm going to say it now, and maybe this is going to jinx it, so I apologize to my Minnesotans. I'm feeling MVP. 2025 seems like it's, if she can stay healthy, knock on wood, it seems like it's her year. I understand that she's going to be going up against the great A'ja Wilson. Shout out to A'ja Wilson dropping her new shoes today. But I think the writing is on the wall that Fee has ascended to that, and now it's her crown to take this coming season, 2025.
It's a good hot take to end on.
Boom.